These are 20 hidden facts about the Undefeated that reveal how a 1969 Western starring John Wayne and Rock Hudson became one of Hollywood's most fascinating behind-the-scenes stories. What happened off-camera turned out to be far more interesting than anything that made it onto the screen, from genuine friendships that defied expectations to injuries that nearly shut down the whole production. 20th Century Fox released the film on November 27, 1969, pairing two of Hollywood's biggest names in a post-Civil War epic that tried to bridge the divide between North and South. What the studio didn't advertise was the real drama playing out in Durango, Mexico, where the cameras rolled. Let's get into the real story of this underappreciated Western classic. Fact number 1. The title comes from a real Confederate general who never surrendered. The foundation of the Undefeated isn't Hollywood fiction at all, and that's because it draws from one of the Civil War's most defiant figures, General Joseph Orville Shelby, who lived from 1830 to 1897 and went by Joe, literally refused to surrender when the war ended, which made him different from virtually every other Confederate officer. Robert E. Lee and other Confederate generals were signing surrender documents and heading home in June of 1865, but Shelby made a completely different choice that day. With approximately 1,000 troops following him, he rode straight into Mexico rather than capitulate to Union forces, and according to the Texas State Historical Association, he reportedly sank his battle flag in the Rio Grande near Eagle Pass, Texas, rather than let it fall into Union hands. Picture that moment for a second, watching him bury those colors in the river before crossing into a foreign country rather than admit defeat. Daniel O'Flaherty wrote a 1954 biography called General Joe Shelby, Undefeated Rebel, and that's likely where the film got its title from. The book documented Shelby's refusal to accept defeat and everything that happened during his Mexican adventures under Emperor Maximilian's regime. The movie takes creative liberties with the historical facts, no question about that, but the core premise of Confederate soldiers seeking a new life in Mexico instead of accepting Union victory actually happened. Shelby's cavalry unit earned the name Iron Brigade because they never lost a battle during the entire war, which is where that Undefeated label came from in the first place. Fact number 2. Frank and Jesse James rode with the Undefeated. Shelby's Iron Brigade cavalry included some names that would become the most infamous in American outlaw history, and we're talking about the James brothers here. Frank and Jesse James actually rode with Shelby's command before they became the legendary bank and train robbers we all know from countless Western films and dime novels. When Shelby led his troops into Mexico in 1865, these future outlaws made that exodus with him. Emperor Maximilian had been installed as Mexico's ruler by French forces, and he declined to let armed Confederate veterans join his army, but he did grant them land near Veracruz for what they called the New Virginia Colony. Between 1865 and 1870, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 Southerners made the trek to Mexico according to historical records from the Texas State Historical Association and University of Virginia Research, all of them hoping to rebuild their lives and maintain their way of living away from Reconstruction. Most of these colonies failed within just a few years because the climate, diseases, and political instability of Mexico during Maximilian's doomed reign made settlement nearly impossible. Maximilian faced a firing squad in 1867, and when that happened, many of the colonists packed up and returned to the United States. The James brothers came back too, but instead of settling into peaceful lives, they turned to crime and made themselves famous for it. Their outlaw careers might never have happened if those Mexican colonies had actually succeeded, which is something to think about. The Undefeated touches on this historical reality without specifically mentioning the James brothers by name. Fact number 3. John Wayne knew Rock Hudson was gay and didn't care. Wayne's well-documented conservative politics and traditional values might make this next fact surprising to people who remember his public persona. He co-starred with Rock Hudson in The Undefeated, knowing full well about Hudson's homosexuality. And here's the thing, it simply didn't matter to him one bit. Mark Griffin's 2018 biography, All That Heaven Allows, a biography of Rock Hudson, reports that Wayne said about Hudson, and this is a direct quote, "It never bothered me. Life's too short. Who the hell cares if he's queer?" That language sounds harsh to modern ears, we all know that, but in the context of 1969 Hollywood, Wayne's acceptance was actually quite progressive when you think about it. Remember, Hudson wouldn't become the first major celebrity to die from AIDS-related illness for another 20 years, and homosexuality faced deep stigma in American society back then. The two men played chess and bridge together constantly during the 3-month shoot in Mexico, genuinely enjoying each other's company in a way that went beyond professional courtesy. Wayne even joked that he'd rather have been born with Hudson's movie star face than his own, and think about that for a second. John Wayne, the ultimate symbol of American masculinity, openly admired another man's looks without any sense of threat or insecurity creeping in. Wayne as a person was different from Wayne as a political figure, and this friendship proves it. He could disagree with people's lifestyles or politics but still treat them with respect and dignity, which wasn't common in that era. Hudson spoke glowingly about Wayne later on, calling him an angel who saved my life back then when no other filmmaker wanted to know me, and those weren't empty words. Their relationship during the Undefeated shows that real human connection can transcend political differences and social prejudices when people actually make the effort. Fact number 4. Wayne's unusual casting criterion. Bridge skills. The role of Colonel James Langdon, the Confederate officer Rock Hudson played, was originally meant for James Arness, and this casting story captures Wayne's personality perfectly. Arness stood 6 feet 7 inches tall if you remember him from Gunsmoke, making him even taller than Wayne's 6'4" frame. Wayne had this thing about casting himself against tall actors because he liked the visual dynamic, and he certainly had the charisma to hold his own against anyone regardless of height. Arness backed out just before shooting was set to begin, and some sources suggest it happened because of a falling out with Wayne over Arness's refusal to appear in Wayne's passion project The Alamo years earlier. Wayne needed a replacement fast, and he chose Rock Hudson, who was certainly a major star with proven box office appeal and stood 6 feet 4 inches, matching Wayne's height perfectly. But here's the quirky part that nobody talks about. Wayne specifically wanted Hudson partly because he knew Hudson was an excellent bridge player, and Wayne wanted a worthy opponent during the 3-month location shoot in Mexico. Think about that decision for just a second. One of the biggest casting decisions in a $7 million Western came down, at least in part to who could play a good game of bridge during downtime. The acting and star power mattered, sure, but Wayne was going to be stuck in Durango, Mexico for 3 months, and he wanted someone he could genuinely enjoy spending time with off camera. That's such a human, relatable reason for a casting choice. When you strip away all the Hollywood glamour, Wayne was confident enough in his own ability to carry a picture that he wasn't worried about being upstaged, so he just wanted good company. Fact number 5. The Wayne-Hudson rivalry that became friendship. The friendship between Wayne and Hudson didn't start smoothly at all, and what happened in those first few days tells you everything about both men. Mark Christian, Hudson's partner who gave interviews after Hudson's death, said Wayne initially picked on Hudson during the early days of filming by constantly offering suggestions about what Hudson should do on camera, from how to deliver a line to where to stand to how to react in a scene. Wayne was the king of Hollywood westerns by this point, having made them since the 1930s with very specific ideas about how scenes should play. Hudson was a major star in romantic comedies and dramas, but had less experience in the western genre, so Wayne's suggestions probably came from a place of trying to help, even if they also could have felt condescending to receive. Hudson's response was brilliant and showed real savvy. Instead of complaining or getting resentful about it, he started doing the exact same thing back to Wayne, walking over after Wayne would finish a scene and offering his own suggestions about what Wayne should do differently. Christian's interview on CNN's Larry King Show from March 29, 2001 describes what happened next. Wayne pointed his finger at Hudson and said simply, "I like you," and the suggestion stopped immediately, which is when a genuine friendship was born between them. Wayne respected people who stood up to him, who didn't simply defer to his legendary status like so many others did. Hudson had the confidence and savvy to push back in a way that earned Wayne's respect rather than his anger, and from that moment on, they were equals on set. Their chemistry improved dramatically after that exchange. If you're enjoying these behind-the-scenes stories about classic Hollywood, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we dive deep into the real stories behind your favorite Western films, and there's plenty more where this came from. Fact number 6. Rock Hudson called the movie crap. Hudson didn't have illusions about the quality of The Undefeated as a film, despite his friendship with Wayne and his positive memories of the filming experience. A 1980 interview, more than a decade after the movie's release, captured Hudson admitting bluntly that he thought the movie was crap, and he didn't mince words about it. The interesting nuance here is that Hudson attributed whatever box office success the film achieved only to the fact that it immediately followed True Grit in theaters, and he was probably right about that assessment. True Grit had opened earlier in 1969 and became a massive hit, earning $31 million and winning Wayne his only Academy Award, which meant audiences were hungry for more John Wayne westerns. The Undefeated benefited from that timing, pure and simple. Hudson was honest that the script wasn't great, and the final film didn't quite come together the way anyone hoped. What he emphasized, though, was that he had fond memories of the production because he became close friends with Wayne and Roman Gabriel, the NFL player who appeared in the film. This is the mark of a true professional, someone who can separate the quality of the work from the quality of the experience without letting one poison the other. Hudson's assessment might sting a little for older viewers who saw The Undefeated in theaters back in 1969, because we all have movies we loved as kids that maybe don't hold up as well as we remember. Hudson's honesty is refreshing, though, because he didn't pretend it was a masterpiece just because it starred two major actors. He called it like he saw it while still acknowledging the positive aspects of making it. Fact number 7. Wayne suffered multiple serious injuries. The Undefeated was anything but a smooth production, and Wayne, who was 61 years old during filming, suffered multiple serious injuries that could have ended the picture completely. February 5, 1969 brought the first injury before filming even began, when Wayne fell in a restaurant in Guaymas, Mexico and broke 2 ribs. Daily Variety reports from the time show there was genuine concern about whether Wayne would be able to start filming on schedule, but Wayne showed up on set when principal photography began on February 7th, just 2 days after breaking his ribs, which tells you everything about his work ethic. April 21, 1969 brought disaster again, when Wayne was filming a horseback scene in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and his saddle cinch slipped. The fall from his horse dislocated his shoulder, which is a serious injury for a 61-year-old man by any measure. Wayne was hospitalized, but incredibly he returned to the set the same day, refusing to let the production shut down. Director Andrew McLaglen had to completely rethink how he filmed Wayne for the rest of the production after that shoulder injury. Specific angles were required to hide Wayne's limited mobility, and if you watch the film carefully, you can notice in certain scenes that Wayne doesn't move his right arm as freely as he normally would in his other pictures. Another physical challenge Wayne faced was having to lose the weight he'd gained to play Rooster Cogburn in True Grit, because for that role, Wayne had intentionally put on pounds to look more weathered and broken down. Colonel John Henry Thomas in The Undefeated was supposed to be a vigorous cavalry officer, though, so Wayne had to shed that weight quickly between films. 61 years old, broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, crash diet, that couldn't have been easy by any stretch. Fact number 8. Legendary crime novelist Jim Thompson wrote the novelization. Most people would never guess this connection. Jim Thompson wrote the tie-in novel for The Undefeated, and Thompson was one of the greatest crime novelists in American literature. His classics like The Killer Inside Me and The Grifters are dark psychological crime novels that influenced generations of writers who came after him. 1969 found Thompson in declining health and poverty, with the novels that would later make him famous mostly out of print and forgotten. Novelizations of movies and television shows, including The Undefeated and the TV series Ironside, were what Thompson was writing just to pay his bills and keep food on the table. The Oklahoma Historical Society records show that Thompson died in 1977, with most of his books unavailable, and his reputation grew dramatically only after his death. Stephen King called Thompson my favorite crime writer, and dubbed him the dime store Dostoevsky, which was a reference to Thompson's ability to explore dark psychological depths in pulp fiction formats. One of literature's most talented writers being reduced to churning out movie novelizations just to survive is a sad commentary on the literary marketplace of that era. Thompson's novelization of The Undefeated is worth reading if you can find it, just to see how one of literature's darkest voices handled a John Wayne Western. Thompson couldn't help but bring some of his noir sensibility to the material, even within the constraints of a novelization assignment. The result is a fascinating artifact, a glimpse of literary genius applied to commercial hackwork out of pure financial necessity. Fact number 9. The 1969 NFL MVP played Wayne's Cherokee son. Roman Gabriel played Blue Boy, John Wayne's adopted Cherokee son in The Undefeated, while serving as the starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, and 1969 brought him the NFL Most Valuable Player award. He filmed this movie during the off-season, then went back to football and had the best season of his career, which is remarkable when you think about the timing. Gabriel was also the first Filipino-American NFL quarterback and the first Asian American to win NFL MVP, making his casting as a Cherokee character despite being Filipino-Irish draw some criticism at the time. Roger Ebert's review, published December 2, 1969 in the Chicago Sun-Times, noted that Gabriel looks about as Indian as one of the Beach Boys, and Ebert wasn't wrong about that observation. Hollywood had a casual approach to casting in that era, to put it mildly. Gabriel brought a physical presence to the role that worked on screen though, standing 6 feet 4 inches and weighing 220 pounds, which made him look believable as a warrior who could hold his own in any fight. An interview Gabriel gave to the Raleigh News and Observer in 1969 captured him saying, "I like acting, and there's nothing like starting with a winner like John Wayne. I hope some of his winning style rubbed off on me." Acting wasn't completely new to Gabriel, because he'd played a headhunter in an episode of Gilligan's Island in 1966. His NFL career lasted until 1977, and the College Football Hall of Fame inducted him later on. Gabriel passed away on April 20, 2024, at the age of 83. Fact number 10. 2 NFL stars from the same team appear in the film. Gabriel wasn't the only Los Angeles Rams player in the Undefeated, and that's because his teammate Merlin Olsen made his film debut playing a Confederate soldier nicknamed Little George, which was an ironic name for a man who stood 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighed over 280 pounds. The Rams went 11-3 in 1969, making the playoffs, which means the team's star quarterback and their dominant defensive linemen were moonlighting as actors during the offseason. Modern NFL contracts and year-round training regimens make that kind of thing hard to imagine happening today. Olsen went on to have a substantial acting career after his football days ended, starring in the TV series Father Murphy and landing a memorable recurring role as Jonathan Garvey in Little House on the Prairie, alongside Michael Landon. Unlike many athletes who dabbled in acting, Olsen took it seriously and developed genuine skills as a performer over the years. Director Andrew McLaglen and producer Robert L. Jacks weren't just looking for a publicity gimmick when they cast 2 Rams players. They needed physically imposing men who could handle horses and look convincing in action scenes, and professional athletes fit that bill perfectly. Both Gabriel and Olsen brought an authenticity to the physical demands of the roles that trained actors might have struggled with. Fact number 11. A pickup truck appears in the final shot. Movie mistakes drive continuity enthusiasts crazy, and this one is a perfect example. A modern pickup truck, described as either red or green depending on print quality, can be seen entering the frame in the background across the river during the final close-up shot of John Wayne. The truck stays visible for only half a second to 2 seconds, but once you know it's there, you can't unsee it no matter how hard you try. IMDb and MovieMistakes.com report that this became a cult trivia item among film buffs, with fans spending years hunting for the truck in different versions of the film. Some VHS transfers cropped it out accidentally, which led to debates about whether it was real or imagined. Anachronisms like this were more common in the days before digital filmmaking, when directors couldn't immediately review footage on monitors the way they can now. Cinematographer William H. Clothier was shooting on location in Mexico with natural light and long lenses, which meant a vehicle could easily slip into frame without anyone noticing during filming. The film is set in 1865, just after the Civil War ended, which makes this particularly amusing because pickup trucks wouldn't be invented for another 40+ years. Most viewers watching in theaters in 1969 wouldn't have noticed it at all or cared if they did, but it drives historians and movie nerds absolutely bonkers to this day. Fact number 12. Major historical inaccuracies riddle the production. That pickup truck is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to historical problems in The Undefeated, and for a film supposedly set in 1865, just after the Civil War, the production is riddled with equipment from the wrong era. Flags provide the first problem because the film shows a 48-star American flag, but during the Civil War era, the flag had between 34 and 36 stars depending on which states had seceded. The 48-star flag didn't exist until 1912 when New Mexico and Arizona became states, so that's a 47-year gap right there. The firearms are all wrong too, with characters using 1873 Colt Peacemakers and 1892 model Winchester rifles, which are guns that wouldn't be invented for another 8 to 27 years after the film's setting. Cavalry uniforms are from the 1870s to 1880s Indian Wars period instead of the Civil War, and there's a reference to Pony Express mail delivery even though the Pony Express ended in October 1861, well before the film's 1865 setting. One scene shows Mrs. Langdon firing 3 rapid shots from what's clearly a single-shot carbine, which is a physical impossibility no matter how you slice it. Older viewers who lived through an era when Hollywood paid more attention to period accuracy find these mistakes particularly glaring. Films like The Horse Soldiers in 1959, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966, took period details much more seriously. Fox was cutting corners on research and props by 1969, focusing more on star power than authenticity. Fact number 13. Hal Needham taught Wayne how to punch and got put in a headlock for it. Hal Needham served as stunt coordinator on The Undefeated, and later became a famous director himself, helming hits like Smokey and the Bandit. But during the filming of The Undefeated, he was still learning the delicate art of dealing with movie star egos. Needham's 2011 memoir Stuntman tells the story of a scene where Wayne struggled to throw convincing punches on camera. Watching the dailies, Needham could see the problem clear as day, so he approached Wayne without being asked and demonstrated the proper technique for a roundhouse punch that would look good on film. Wayne didn't say anything at the time, which should have been Needham's first warning sign. Later that night, the cast and crew gathered at a bar, and Wayne spotted Needham, walked over and suddenly grabbed him in a headlock without any warning. Needham wasn't sure if Wayne was going to release him or tear his head off, and those moments of uncertainty probably felt like hours. Wayne held Needham in the headlock and told him, "You keep the good ideas coming and keep the bad ones to yourself," then gave Needham what he described as a friendly Dutch rub, essentially messing up his hair, and said, "Get it done, Needham." Wayne didn't appreciate being shown up in front of others, even if the advice was helpful and well-intentioned. He also recognized good ideas when he heard them though, and he developed respect for Needham's expertise over time. They remained friends until Wayne's death in 1979. Needham learned his lesson: save your best suggestions for private conversations, not public demonstrations. Fact number 14. The film was billed as using more horses than any movie ever made. The spectacular scale of the horse action was one of the major selling points for The Undefeated, and the production was originally billed as having the most horses ever used in a movie, with 2,500 animals involved. ClassicMovieReverend.com and The Horse.com report that the horses were rented from local villagers in Durango, Mexico, with each horse having its hooves branded to identify ownership. That branding system made getting an accurate count nearly impossible, even for the production accountants. The story features a drive of 3,000 wild horses to Mexico, so the filmmakers needed massive herds to make the scenes convincing and realistic. Managing that many animals on a film set required incredible logistics when you think about it. Wranglers, veterinarians, feed, water, and coordination between potentially hundreds of horse owners all had to work together seamlessly. The choreography of the stampede scenes alone must have been an absolute nightmare to plan and execute safely. Whether The Undefeated actually holds the record for most horses in a film is debatable because earlier epics like The Charge of the Light Brigade in 1936 and War and Peace in 1956 also used enormous numbers of horses. For the American Western genre though, 2,500 horses was certainly unprecedented in 1969. Older viewers who remember seeing The Undefeated in theaters probably found those stampede scenes the most impressive parts of the film. Before CGI existed, these had to be real animals running full speed with real stuntmen riding among them, which meant the danger was genuine and the spectacle was authentic. Fact number 15. Price gouging nearly ended Wayne's relationship with Durango. Durango, Mexico became one of the most popular locations for American westerns in the 1960s and 70s, but The Undefeated production nearly destroyed that relationship completely. Local vendors in Durango saw a major Hollywood production coming to town and decided to maximize their profits by any means necessary. They overcharged for food, housing, and services to the point where it became obvious they were taking advantage. And according to the AFI catalog, Wayne was so angered by this treatment that he threatened never to shoot in Durango again. Wayne's presence in Durango brought millions of dollars to the local economy and international prestige to the city, so this was a serious threat with real consequences. Word getting out that one of Hollywood's biggest stars was boycotting the location could have led other productions to follow suit, which would have devastated Durango's film industry. The situation became serious enough that the governor of Durango had to personally intervene, meeting with Wayne face-to-face and promising that the overcharging wouldn't be repeated. He guaranteed that future productions would be treated fairly, and only after receiving this personal assurance did Wayne agree to return. Wayne and director McLaglen did come back to Durango the following year to film Chisholm in 1970, proving the governor kept his word. Durango continued to thrive as a filming location for years afterward, but this incident shows how fragile these relationships could be, and how much economic power a single movie star wielded in that era. Fact number 16. Western novelist Lewis B. Patton was denied screenplay credit. Lewis B. Patton wrote over 110 Western novels during his career, which makes the next part particularly unjust. Patton contributed to the screenplay of The Undefeated, but went uncredited for his work, receiving neither recognition nor proper payment. Stanley L. Ho wrote the original script with contributions from Casey Robinson, and James Lee Barrett, who had written The Green Berets for Wayne, did the final screenplay revision that appears in the credits. The AFI catalog and film historians confirm that Patton also worked on the script without receiving credit though, which was a common Hollywood practice at the time. Patton was a prolific and respected Western novelist whose work appeared regularly in magazines and paperback originals from the 1940s through the 1970s. Authentic details and complex characters were what his novels were known for. But Hollywood had a long history of bringing in uncredited writers to fix scripts, then denying them credit and payment for their contributions. The Writers Guild of America has rules about screenplay credit now, but in 1968 and 69, when The Undefeated was being written, those rules were less protective than they are today. Literary historians describe Patton's uncredited work on this film as part of a broader pattern of Hollywood ignoring or underpaying Western novelists, which was standard practice for the industry. What appears on screen is often the product of many hands, not just the names in the credits, and that's worth remembering for viewers who appreciate the craft of screenwriting. Fact number 17. The ending is unique among 1969 Westerns. 1969 was a turning point for the Western genre, and you could see it in the films released that year. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid redefined the buddy Western with its tragic ending in Bolivia, while The Wild Bunch showed aging outlaws dying violently in Mexico. These films reflected the disillusionment of the Vietnam era because heroes couldn't simply ride off into the sunset anymore. The Undefeated took a different approach entirely, and that made it stand out from its contemporaries. Unlike those other 1969 Westerns where characters die in exile, The Undefeated ends with its characters returning to America after resolving their North-South differences. The final scene shows the combined group of Union and Confederate veterans rejecting both Dixie and the Battle Hymn of the Republic before settling on Yankee Doodle as a symbol of unity. Film analysis from the Magnificent 60s blog notes that this ending was deliberately hopeful in a way that other Westerns of the era weren't even attempting. Sam Peckinpah was showing the death of the Old West, George Roy Hill was romanticizing doomed outlaws, and Andrew McLaglen was trying to tell a story about reconciliation and moving forward together. Audiences in 1969 watched their country being torn apart by Vietnam, race riots and political assassinations, so this message of unity might have seemed naive to them. The critics certainly thought so at the time. Older viewers today might find something refreshing about a Western that believes former enemies can become friends and that Americans can put aside their differences to build something better. Fact number 18. Director McLaglen deliberately imitated John Ford. Andrew V. McLaglen came to directing with impeccable credentials because his father was Victor McLaglen, the Oscar-winning star of many John Ford films, including The Informer and The Quiet Man. Growing up around Ford's productions meant Andrew absorbed the master's techniques from an early age. The Undefeated shows McLaglen deliberately employing Ford's trademark style, from sweeping outdoor panoramas shot in Monument Valley and other iconic Western locations, to human interest subplots that gave depth to supporting characters. Teen romance storylines and a gallery of character actors who appeared in multiple Ford films round out the homage. Roger Ebert noticed this in his review from December 2, 1969, writing that the film exhibits a lot of the Ford trademarks, but noting that McLaglen was never able to draw his threads together the way Ford could. That's a perceptive criticism, because McLaglen understood Ford's techniques without having Ford's genius for making all those disparate elements cohere into a unified vision. Watching The Undefeated is like seeing a talented student trying to replicate the master's work if you love John Ford's westerns like The Searchers, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and Fort Apache. All the pieces are there on screen, but the magic doesn't quite happen the way it should. McLaglen had a successful career directing westerns and other action films though, and his work on The Undefeated shows genuine craft even if it doesn't reach Ford's artistic heights. Fact number 19. Hudson revealed Wayne wore lifts and a corset. Rock Hudson revealed some of John Wayne's secrets for maintaining his iconic image on screen in later interviews, and these revelations might shatter some illusions about the Duke. Mark Griffin's biography captures Hudson saying, "I did a movie with Duke Wayne and was very surprised to find out he had small feet, wore lifts and a corset. Hollywood is seldom what it seems." Hudson and Wayne remained friends, so this wasn't meant as a cruel expose, but it was certainly candid about the reality behind the image. Wayne built his career on projecting rugged masculinity and physical dominance, using the same tricks that many Hollywood stars employed to maintain their personas. Lifts in his boots added height, and a corset held in his aging midsection as the years took their toll. Wayne was 61 years old by 1969, and had survived lung cancer surgery in 1964, which removed part of his lung. His body was showing the wear and tear of decades of physical acting, and the corset helped him maintain the silhouette that audiences expected from John Wayne when they bought their tickets. Older viewers who remember Wayne as the ultimate symbol of masculine strength might find this revelation disappointing, but it also humanizes him in a way. Wayne worked hard to maintain his image because he understood that audiences weren't paying to see a 61-year-old man with health problems, they were paying to see John Wayne, the icon. Creating that illusion required effort and assistance, and Wayne was professional enough to do whatever it took. Fact number 20. The film lost money for Fox, despite $8 million gross. The harsh business reality of The Undefeated is this: despite being the 18th highest-grossing film of 1969, it still lost money for 20th Century Fox, which tells you everything about how expensive the production actually was. The production budget ran between $7 and $7.2 million, which was a substantial sum for 1969 by any measure. Aubrey Solomon's book 20th Century Fox, A Corporate and Financial History, and Steven Silverman's The Fox That Got Away show that the film needed to earn $12,425,000 in rentals just to break even. By December 1970, the film had earned $8,775,000 in rentals, falling well short of its break-even point. Domestically, it grossed around $8 million according to the Numbers database, but that wasn't enough to make the film profitable in its initial release. True Grit earned $31 million the same year, which was almost 4 times what The Undefeated made, and that puts things in perspective. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid earned $102 million, about 13 times more than The Undefeated, and even The Wild Bunch, which was controversial and rated R, earned $10,500,000. Fox executives saw The Undefeated as a frustrating missed opportunity because they'd paired 2 major stars, spent lavishly on production, and released it at the perfect time during Thanksgiving weekend, traditionally a strong box office period. The film underperformed expectations anyway. Variety's review from 1969 pinpointed the problem. Basically wrong is the whole uneven mood of the film. Neither Wayne nor Hudson seems to know whether they are in a light comedy or a serious drama. The script couldn't decide what kind of movie it wanted to be, and that tonal confusion hurt its commercial prospects badly. The Undefeated stands as a time capsule of Hollywood at the end of the 1960s, made by people who understood the old ways of making westerns with big stars, sweeping locations, and simple stories of good versus evil. What they struggled with was adapting to a changing cultural landscape where audiences wanted more complexity and ambiguity than traditional westerns could provide. Behind the scenes, the film was a story of genuine friendship between 2 very different men who found common ground despite their differences, and that matters more than any box office numbers. John Wayne and Rock Hudson built a relationship that transcended politics and prejudice during those 3 months in Mexico, and their chess games and bridge matches mattered more than the movie they were making. Fox took a financial hit on the film, but it didn't damage Wayne's career because he'd follow it with Chisholm, Rio Lobo, Big Jake, and other successful westerns. Hudson would transition to television with Macmillan and Wife and continue his successful career until his tragic death in 1985. Knowing these hidden facts enriches our appreciation of the film for those of us who grew up watching The Undefeated on television, or perhaps saw it in theaters during its initial release. We can look past its flaws and see the craft, the effort, and the genuine human stories that went into its creation. If you enjoyed learning these hidden facts about The Undefeated, please hit that like button. Leave a comment with your favorite memory of this film or other John Wayne westerns you'd like us to cover, and subscribe to our channel, because we're dedicated to preserving and sharing the real stories behind classic Hollywood films. Your support helps us keep these memories alive for future generations, so thanks for watching, and keep riding the Hollywood trail with us.